Making bold demands and organizing to fight for them is an act of faith. Faith in each other. And yes, these corporations are mountains, but together we can make these mountains move.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
A lot has been happening with this UAW stuff on strike. And I just want to start this off by reminding people that the corporate media is they're gonna pull what the compensation is for the top progression of the top tier of workers at the big three automakers. And then they're gonna say, look at these people, they've got it better than you, and they're going on strike. They're greedy. They're shutting down the economy because they're greedy, while not talking about how the CEOs at all of these big three companies make 300 times more than that person, right? It's insane. And so they're going to take the top tier, the top progression of the top tier, despite the fact that the majority of UAW members at the big three automakers today are not in the first tier. They're in the second tier. They are either temporary employees or they are second tier permanent employees. Meaning, if they're temporary employees, they don't even have health care, they don't have a pension, they don't have a 401k, they don't have time off, nothing. It's just straight pay. And that straight pay starts at $15 an hour at some of these plants and caps for temporary employees, caps after 6 years at $19.82 at a Jeep plant. After 6 years. And then if you want to go into the second tier of permanent employee, you got to take a pay cut to go to $17 an hour to top out at $32 an hour after like 8 years. It's insane what UAW members at the big three automakers have had to put up with. Okay, so the majority of people are either in the second tier of permanent employees, which means that they may get a similar rate of pay, but they don't have a pension, their health care is not as good, et cetera, or they're temporary employees who have even less than that doing the same job, okay? So it's important to remember that because a big part of this strike is the elimination of tiers, the ending of abuse of temporary workers, and bringing everyone tier one. Is one of the chants at these rallies and on the picket lines. And that's important to understand, and you're not going to hear that, unfortunately, on a lot of corporate media. And it's a shame because the media is supposed to inform people, and instead they're misinforming and misleading people. And over the last 4 years, Shawn Fain on Wednesday night he's been doing weekly live streams, and he had a longer one last week on Wednesday night. It was about an hour long. I would recommend people go and watch it. It's very good. And he started off by showing some numbers over the last 4 years. And I didn't pull the graphic to show you on the screen, but I'm going to read this to you. Over the last 4 years, profits at the big three automakers have gone up by 65%. Pay for the CEOs at the big three automakers has gone up by 40%. Stock buybacks has gone up by 1,500%. I didn't read that wrong. I didn't add an extra zero. Stock buybacks are up by 1,500%. The average price of a car over the last 4 years has increased by 34%. Inflation over the last 4 years has increased by 20%. The top wage rate of the top tier of a UAW member, all of these numbers, remember, 65%, 40%, 1,500%, 34%, 20%. All of those numbers are what you need to have in mind because the UAW top wage rate has only increased by 6%. Single digit in 4 years, 20% inflation. Golden era for these companies, according to the Ford CEO. 6% raise over 4 years. Insulting. And the labor cost per vehicle is 4 to 5%. 1/20th of the cost of a vehicle goes to paying the people who actually do the work. So let's listen to Shawn Fain talk about this moment. Here, let's play this clip about him, where he's really kind of, laying the truth out for people.
So think about that. They could double our wages and not raise car prices and still make billions of dollars in profit. They spent more money enriching shareholders in a year than they spent on us in the entirety of the last contract cycle. They want to scare the American people into thinking the auto workers are the problem. We're not the problem. That chart is the problem. Corporate greed is the problem. And come tomorrow night, if they force us, we're about to make it the big three's problem.
There you go. They could double what they pay these people and still make billions of dollars. Okay? It's important. One criticism that the UAW is demanding too much from the big three. That's one criticism. And here is, this is a quote from Shawn Fain, right?
Right.
He says, quote, "I know that our demands are ambitious, but I've told the companies repeatedly, I'm not the reason that the members' expectations are so high. What's driving members' expectations are the big three's profits. You cannot make $21 billion in profits in half a year, in 6 months, and expect members to take a mediocre contract. You cannot make $250 billion in North American profits over the last decade and expect us to keep aiming low and settling lower. Our campaign slogan is simple: record profits mean record contracts." So that's what they're, that's where things stand as far as, what the media is trying to tell you. Just don't, And most people, and I'm kind of speaking to the choir for the most part, even beyond the normal audience that's going to find this stuff, because 75% of the American people support the auto workers.
That's right.
So it's a pretty common sense kind of thing. But so on each of these demands that they've got, and we're going to go through them one by one on tiers, wages, COLA, blah, blah, blah. The big three are not where they need to be. Just simply not. And so he went through these. He went through those in his live stream, and I'm just going to go through them quickly, and then we've got a couple more clips from that live stream. So on tiers, the UAW demands is to end tiers and have a 90-day progression to the top rate, and restore benefits, retiree health care, and pensions. Ford wants, all of them want to keep tiers. Every single one. Ford, GM, and Stellantis. Ford wants a 4-year progression, and they rejected all pension and healthcare and retiree healthcare proposals. GM, they also want to keep a 4-year progression. They've rejected all pension and retiree healthcare proposals, and they want to continue substandard pay for CCA and GMCH. We had a brother from CCA call in and talk about how they're basically a separate second tier in GM. Unacceptable. Stellantis wants to keep 4-year progression, rejected all pension and retiree healthcare proposals, and they want to continue substandard pay at Mopar. On wages, UAW is demanding significant double-digit pay raises to match the salary increases of the big three CEOs, catch up with inflation, and make up for decades of falling wages. Ford, all of them have inadequate pay offers. Ford says 20% over 4 years. GM, 18% over 4 years. Stellantis, 17.5% over 4 years. Those don't even make up for the inflation of the last 4 years, right? So even with the most generous offer on the table right now, Ford, at the end of this 4-year contract, a Ford UAW member would be making less than they did in 2019. 4 years from now, 2027. Not acceptable. on COLA, cost of living adjustments. UAW wants a return to COLA. They say, like, look, if inflation rises, you got to meet that with your pay, because we can't be the only people that are at risk for inflation. You cannot offload all of the risk of inflation onto your employees, and that is a reasonable position. Ford is offering a deficient COLA that would only have provided an estimated wage protection of less than $1 over the next 4.5 years. GM has a deficient COLA that would provide an estimated 0% wage protection over the next 4.5 years. Stellantis has a deficient COLA that would provide an estimated 0% wage protection over the next 4.5 years, or lump sums that many employees won't receive. Now, look, these are all deficient. These are all not acceptable. But remember, and Shawn Fain has pointed this out, at the beginning of this thing, everybody said there's no way you can get COLA back at all. COLA is off the table forever. We gave it up years ago. It's never coming back. It's back on the table. It's deficient, but it's back on the table. That's what happens when you aim high. That's what happens when you raise expectations and when you have a credible strike threat, when you are willing to leverage the power that you have. You get stuff back on the table. On profit sharing, the UAW wants to enhance profit sharing. And they say, look, if you're going to spend money on stock buybacks, they're not even saying you can't spend money on stock buybacks, which I think would be reasonable because, as somebody pointed out in the chat, they used to be illegal until Reagan came along. Ruined everything in this country. UAW says they want enhanced profit sharing, and they say, look, if you're going to spend money on stock buybacks, for every $1 million that you spend on stock buybacks, our members need $2. And that's still not even, you're only spending at that profit sharing formula, you're spending only like a third as much on workers as you are on shareholders, because they got about 140,000 members. So if you do $1 million in stock buybacks, what you're doing is like 700,000 or 600,000, or no, 140 members. That's only 300,000. $300,000 for every 1 million on stock buybacks. Okay, that is, again, eminently reasonable. In fact, I think the argument could be easily made that you ought to double the amount of stock buybacks on employees. For every dollar that you spend on stock buybacks, $2 ought to go to employees. But look, the UAW is being reasonable. Ford, all of them actually want concessions on profit sharing. Every single one. Ford would have resulted in a 21% smaller profit sharing check over the last 2 years. GM would have resulted in a 29% smaller profit sharing check last week. Stellantis calls for significant reductions of profit sharing checks based on an unknown internal company attendance calculation. On temporary employees, the UAW wants to end the abuse of temporary workers by converting to full-time after 90 days, providing full benefits and profit sharing.
Absolutely. Shouldn't have a second tier of employees, shouldn't abuse temporary employees. Temporary employees are supposed to be temporary, right? Right.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. Ford says they'd be willing to do a conversion of all current temporary employees with 90 days continuous service to full-time in progression. So here we go. We're starting to get some movement from Ford on that. But from GM and Stellantis, they're both not adequate. GM says inadequate benefits, no profit sharing, meager wage increases to only $20 an hour for temporary employees. Not acceptable. Stellantis, no path to full-time, inadequate benefits, no profit sharing, meager wage increases to $20 an hour. Not cutting it. On job security, the UAW wants the Working Family Protection Program, which we have been very hyped about. It's very cool. Basically says, look, if you take a plant away from our community, you've got to keep paying us to build our community. You can't leave us in the lurch. We're spending every day hundreds of years of our community's life for you. You can't just leave us in the lurch. You got to be in it with us. They also want the right to strike over plant closures. Ford rejected all job security proposals. GM rejected all job security proposals. Stellantis rejected all job security proposals and proposed the unilateral right to close and sell 18 facilities, including various assembly and powertrain plants and part depots. Not acceptable. Work-life balance. UAW wants an increased work-life and family balance with more paid time off and holidays. Ford rejected all quality of life proposals except for Juneteenth and 2 weeks of paid parental leave. GM rejected all quality of life proposals except Juneteenth. Stellantis rejected all quality of life proposals except Juneteenth. And this is another something that the corporate media is really hitting on. We're going to play a clip in overtime of Tim Scott saying how the 4-day work week is just insane. And these people would be saying the exact same thing in the, in the 30s, 40s, and 50s when people were fighting for the 40-hour work week. They would say, "Oh, what you want to make more money and you want to work less? You're lazy. You're greedy." And that's absolutely not the case. American workers are more productive today than ever, and yet we are working more than in the past, and much more than people in other countries. Shawn Fain has pointed this out multiple times in his live stream. Workers in Germany work 3 months less a year than American workers. 3 months less. You sacrifice 3 months, 30% more of your life to making some ghoul at the top of a corporation profits than workers in Germany. And yet somehow every single company in Germany has not moved and outsourced. Somehow Volkswagen still makes cars in Germany. Right? Not impossible. On retirees, UAW wants a significant increase to retiree pay. All of them have rejected increases to retiree pay. And so,
correct me if I'm wrong, Jacob, I believe retirees haven't received a pay increase since 2003.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's my understanding.
Last I checked, cost of living, it's gone up since 2003.
Yeah, indeed. So, and retirees, like Shawn Fain has pointed out, retirees built these companies. Retirees built the UAW. Retirees built the middle class. And for the big three to disrespect them like that is just really, really, really gross. And so that's where they are, and that is why the UAW went on strike on Thursday night at midnight at facilities at all of the big three auto companies. For the first time in history, UAW's never done that. They've always picked a target to strike and tried to pattern agreements out based on that. But this time they're targeting all of the companies. They're negotiating all the companies at the same time. And so that's the way that they're doing it. And specifically, what they're calling the stand-up strike is they are starting at multiple facilities or at one facility at each of the big three automakers and having them strike at first. So, and that what that does is it gives them room to escalate. They don't put everything on the table at once. It gives them room to escalate at the bargaining table. It also saves their strike fund some money, because even though the UAW has the biggest strike fund of any union in the country, if you start doing math, as you should do if you're thinking about these things, if you start dividing any number by 140,000 employees, it gets small fast. It gets small fast. And so you don't want to ask people to go on strike if they don't have to, and you don't want to spend money that you don't have to. And so what they're trying to do is trying to maximize pain on the big three automakers with minimal pain for the UAW members. Also, what we've been seeing over the last couple of days since the strike began is Ford, and I think now another company came out this morning and saying that they are idling a couple of plants as a result of the strike at these final assembly plants. Some people are trying to say that striking final assembly plants is not strategic, which does not make sense to me, because for a product to actually go to market, what has to happen? It has to be assembled, right? At the final assembly plant. Doesn't get sold if it's not assembled at the final assembly plant. Very strategic in my view. And so some of the companies are idling some of these other facilities that the UAW has not struck. And what does that mean? That means they are being locked out. That means they are not striking. That means they're eligible for unemployment. So that is that much less money that has to come out of the strike fund to support these workers because they're able to get unemployment. It's very strategic. Very, very strategic. And this also, like friend of the show, brother from Pennsylvania, Connor Lewis, president of Labor Council up there. He said that this gives them the ability in bargaining. If the big three automakers slide a proposal across the table and say, here's our offer, the UAW can just walk out of the room, make a call, come back to the table and say, another plant just went on strike. That doesn't cut it.
Right.
Give us something else. And they're not going to know which plants are going to go on strike. Somebody else mentioned this in the chat. There are a lot of rumors, and it's not totally substantiated, but there's been a lot of UAW members saying this. So I think it's probably reasonable. And in these times did report that that the big three automakers were caught off guard. But what I'm talking about is that there was a leak that came out, ostensibly leaking the UAW strike targets. And so because of that, the big three tried to move products in anticipation of these facilities being struck. And the leak was of the wrong plants. It was not the plants that ultimately went on strike. And so there was very costly movement that was for naught because it wasn't those facilities. And then the facilities that did go on strike were not prepared to go on strike. The management wasn't, right? So causing a lot of confusion, causing millions of dollars in damages outside of just what you would get from the loss of production. So it's great. And, another thing, people are saying, like, why don't you just all go out at once, right? Why don't you all go out at once? And I do not understand how people do not see the logic of starting small and escalating, because they couldn't strike before this because of the contract. Before the contract expires, you can't strike unless you're willing to basically bankrupt your union. And maybe there are times and places where you've got to take a stand basically on principle, but again, no reason to bankrupt your union if you don't have to, right? And so there we go. That's what they're doing, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And the members seem like they're behind it by and large. The members on the picket line seem like they're having a good time. They're in high spirits. There was some video circulating of somebody burning something in a burn barrel, and so the reporter asked him, what is that in the burn barrel? And he's like, it's our old contract, copies of our old contract. So good times being had, and things are getting serious. So that's basically what is happening right now. And I wanted to play this next clip from Shawn Fain as he was gearing up to announce what exactly the strike plans were going to be. And it's a long clip. It's about 5 minutes long, but it was so powerful in my view that I really, really wanted to share it with y'all. And like I said, the stream was like an hour long on Wednesday night. So I would recommend going back and checking it out. But listen to how he talks about his run for the presidency in the UAW, the moment that we're in, and some of the thoughts that's going through his mind as all of this is happening. Let's play this clip.
Those of you that don't know me, one of the first things I do every day when I get up is I crack open my devotional for a daily reading and I pray. Earlier this week on Saturday, I was struck with my daily reading, which seemed to speak directly to the moment we find ourselves in. And it was called Fear and Faith. And I found it interesting that morning I was getting ready to head to Solidarity House to meet with the negotiating committees and review this plan with them. And under that Fear and Faith daily reading, the commentary I read talked about great acts of faith are seldom born out of calm calculation. It wasn't logic that caused Moses to raise his staff on the bank of the Red Sea. It wasn't a confident committee that prayed in a small room in Jerusalem for Peter's release from prison. It was a fearful, desperate band of believers that were backed into a corner. It was a church with no options, a congregation of the have-nots pleading for help. And never in those moments were they stronger. You know, at the beginning of every act of faith, there's often a seed of fear. And I got to tell you this, when I made the decision to run for president of our union, you know, it became a real test of my faith, because I can tell you I sure as hell had doubts. Because I knew what I was taking on. And I knew what I was up against. So I had to look myself in the mirror and I had to tell myself, either you believe it's possible to stand up and make a difference, or you don't. And if you don't believe it, then shut up and stay on the sideline. I knew in my heart that the membership felt exactly like I did, that my union family was fed up with all the corrupt stuff that had went on in the past, and they were fed up with the company union philosophy. I chose to have faith in our members, and that's why I'm standing here today with all of you. I chose to be sworn in when I became president on my grandmother's Bible, which I have here with me. I take this with me a lot of places. In 1933, at the height of the Great Depression, my grandmother's parents couldn't provide for their children any longer. So they dropped her and her brothers and sisters off at an orphanage. That orphanage gave her this Bible. And in the front of this Bible, there's an inscription that has my grandmother's name and says Christmas 1933, Halston Orphanage. You know, years later, my grandparents were part of the millions of families who moved to the Midwest to work for auto companies and seek out a better life. Like my grandfather's pay stub that I carry with me every day, I'm proud to have inherited my grandma's Bible and her faith. You know, and I want to share with you another powerful verse from Scripture that really speaks to me in this moment. And it's Matthew 17:20 and 21, where it says, "For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." For years, as a member of the UAW, and even during this current round of bargaining, I found it heartbreaking to read comments from members and retirees that have such low expectations. How many times have we been told we'll live to fight another day? I've read comments such as, "You can't get cost of living back, it's gone forever." I've heard comments about, "You can't bargain for retirees." I've read comments about how you're asking for too much. That's company talk. And it comes from a mindset that's a direct result of company unionism. It comes from the worst of our union's history, of setting expectations low and settling even lower. And for many of us who have yet to see our union fight hard and win big, it's hard to imagine what that would look like. Making bold demands and organizing to fight for them is an act of faith. It's an act of faith in each other. And yes, these corporations are mountains, but together we can make these mountains move.
The first time that I listened to that, like, I'm not a religious person, but I started tearing up. I thought it was very inspiring. You know, later, like I said, continue to recommend reading that. Lenny Powers in the comments says, "A camel has more of a chance to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man has to pass through the gates of heaven." He also read that verse in the live stream, and so basically telling the big three CEOs that they're going to go to hell, which, you know, if you read the Bible, then that's probably you know, if you read it literally, if you're one of those, then, you know, that's kind of what you're stuck with. And so I really appreciated that. Like I said, not a religious person, but I grew up very religious. That's the kind of language that I have grown up around. That's the kind of speech that I've grown up around, and it makes me feel at home. And for other people that are not religious, you can't. That's just, I've seen some silly stuff about Christian nationalism in the UAW. Come on, that's ridiculous.
Right. I don't think references to Scripture are equivalent to Christian nationalism.
He's not saying that you got to be a Christian. He's saying this is part of what's motivating him, his faith in a higher power, and his faith in his fellow human beings. And if you're not willing to hear what people believe, just hear it. You're not going to be very good in the movement. So I really appreciated that. I thought it was very good. And so there we go. They're on strike. Yesterday he had a rally with Bernie Sanders, and Bernie, Bernie's always good at these kind of things. And so I have a clip from his speech last night. So here's Bernie Sanders.
Let me tell you, and Shawn has made this point over and over again, in the last 50 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth. Problem is, it's gone in the wrong direction. Instead of going from the top down to the bottom, it's gone from the bottom up to the top. And what this strike is about, and what workers are standing up all over this country for, is we're going to reverse that trend. If the ruling class of this country wants a redistribution of wealth, we're going to give it to them.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.